opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. All right. It is time for another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate you being here. Want to give a big shout out to Moon Baby over there on Pill. Says, hey there, family. I'm good to see you, hun. Also, big shout out to one Ohio gal now. Oh, Zach, I just love y'all. We love you too. Thank you for being here. And Principled Enigma, starting off strong. Zach, the best of the genre. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Filter Dog over there on Pilled as well for the can. All right, guys. So, the latest in fraud prevention is taking place right now in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We've got some pretty staggering yet very familiar findings in Pennsylvania. Exactly the same as we've seen in New York, in Ohio, in Maine, in California. Every single time a state is run by Dems, it appears that fraud runs rampant. And of course, the question we always have is, where does all that money end up going? You know, it's not just going into the pockets of those scammers. They are getting something with that money. They're probably buying off the very politicians that are overseeing their states and making sure that nobody is stopping them. So do me a favor, hit that like button, help us out by sharing the show, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus Versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys are having a great day. We have so much to discuss, and we are going to begin, first of all, with a little tidbit from President Trump that he spoke about yesterday in an Oval Office presentation. First of all, though, Mokanon, thank you so much. I just voted in the Michigan Democrat primary against El Sayed and Benson. Don't really care who wins on the Republican side here. Curious to see if Haley Stevens can keep the fake accent going. I don't think Haley Stevens is going to progress. I honestly believe that on the Democrat side, El Sayed is probably going to end up being the Democratic winner. Now, I think Mike Rogers is probably going to end up being the Republican candidate come the general election. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see exactly how it goes. And if anybody else out there has also had the opportunity to vote, go ahead and tell us in the chat. We'll go ahead and comment on it. But let's first of all begin with President Trump. Now, over the weekend, there initially was a scheduled attack on Iran. President Trump had been very open about it. But, of course, like many times in the past, he has at the last second withdrawn the promise to go in and rain holy hell down upon the Iranian regime. And I saw a lot of people commenting on it, kind of talking about how weary they are with the whole thing. And then President Trump was asked about it by the press. You know, it seems like I understand why people are wary about it. Many people, myself included, didn't think that it was going to go on this long. I still don't think that it's going to be a forever war like what we saw in Iraq or Afghanistan. And it does seem like we are basically like hanging on the edge of getting this finished. But the only thing standing between President Trump and peace, in my opinion, appears to be the deep state. In this instance, the reason President Trump had to cancel the plans is because someone from his administration reached out to the Iranians and told them exactly what was going to happen. Very, very troubling. Now, in one respect, it's a good thing because it means that we didn't have to drop any bombs and people didn't have to die and the Iranians capitulated. Is that going to lead to the rationale that they will need to bring about peace? I don't know. It seems like everything is just constantly in flux up in the air. And this seems, from my opinion, to be the number one thing holding President Trump back from being able to get even more people on his side. But let's go ahead and take a listen to this, because somebody in the administration leaking to the Iranians is a huge deal.
Mr. President, this is at least the 5th time you've turned off airstrikes against Iran since April to negotiate. What is your message to the American people who are wondering what has changed this time? Why should it be anything?
Well, you don't know. I don't know. I think we're going to maybe get something, but I want to give them every last chance before decapitation. Very tough to do what we have planned, still planned. We'll see what happens. But it's a very, very tough thing to do. I think I'm very proud of the fact that I'll give people a chance. This is a big move. To do an attack that big on a country, I'd rather not do it. Now, we've already, through lots of large attacks, but they were normal large. Hopefully they'll come to their senses, because what happened cannot have a nuclear weapon, but hopefully they'll come to their senses. So they called me and they said, please don't attack, we'll make a deal. That's the real truth. And everyone knows it. And who wouldn't call? And they found out through leaks and sleazebags, a lot of sleazebags, leakers. Leakers should be put in jail. They have to strengthen up the laws for leakers. But in this case, leakers helped because they said the severity of the attack, and Iran knew it. They knew what was coming. It was going to come last night, and it would have gone on for a long time, and there'd be essentially very little left. There'd be nothing left. And if I'm given a chance to let a lot of people live, I want to give that chance. So I'm under no time constraint. I don't happen to be running, but a lot of very good Republicans are running. And you have a sick ideology taking place right now.
So there's a couple of things I think are happening here. Leakers are one thing. We're kind of used to that. Stacey Mack, thank you very much for joining as a monthly supporter over there on Rumble. We are used to seeing people leak things from the administration. However, this is a leak of a different caliber. The other thing we're used to seeing is the Trump administration employing the use of honeypots to determine who is the leaker. Now, it's entirely possible that President Trump was never going to rain holy hell down on Iran in the way that he was describing. He mentioned something akin to, what happened in World War II. We dropped nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I personally doubt that would have been truly in play. But as I've always said, if you're going to, ensure peace through strength, the people that you are trying to project your power onto must believe that you are willing to do things like dropping a nuclear weapon or blowing up all of the critical infrastructure in your country, which would set you back 20 years. So I think it's entirely possible that this was spoken about with key people inside the administration, because it would have been a rather tight-knit group. And then, of course, that information is relayed to somebody else and given directly to the Iranians. That's going to put the possible number of people that could have been in possession of that information in a very, very, very small group. And that would allow the Trump administration to determine who that person is, who they need to get rid of, but more importantly, who they need to prosecute. It also putting the fear of God into whoever is running Iran at this point, because I think it's totally up for grabs. It was enough to have them get on the phone and say, please, let's just make this happen. Is it really going to happen? Or is it like Alias said, and it's just another game of whack-a-mole? I sincerely hope that this time is for real. But At the end of the day, nobody knows except for POTUS and whoever is on the other end of that line. So we'll continue to watch. Now, I felt that it was only proper that we pay homage to the young woman who lost her life at In-N-Out yesterday. It's really, really sad. Horrible when anybody loses their life, especially under tragic circumstances like this. But this appears to be a young woman who had her entire life ahead of her. She's very beautiful. I mean, just, it's horrible to imagine that somebody who had so much promise and was working at this brand new restaurant, probably making her way through college, or maybe she was done with college and she was trying to figure out what she was doing. I don't know. But she's left a family without a daughter. She's left friends without her. And the people of Twin Falls, Idaho, are now forced to, unfortunately, endure this loss with each other. So this young woman was an employee there at the In-N-Out Burger, and her name is Ashley Garibay. She's actually from Stockton, California. So the president of In-N-Out yesterday, of course, had put out that statement mentioning one of our beautiful associates was killed in that Saturday shooting. They will be mourning with the families and praying with them as they tread through this very painful season. Ashley was identified as one of those 3 people that was killed in the shooting. And a friend of hers, Alyssa Juarez, wrote on social media, "Oh, my beautiful friend, my heart breaks seeing your pictures, knowing that they'll just be memories now." And this is Ashley and her mother, Sabrina Garibay. And she changed her profile picture, obviously, to include this image with her and her daughter. And, they're the spitting image of each other. It's just tragic. She said, a friend of the Garibays wrote, "Please pray for my friend Sabrina Garibay. Her daughter, Ashley, was tragically taken from us on Saturday. This is just unbelievable. Ashley was so amazing. She was so full of energy, life, creativity, and she loved helping others. If you know Sabrina, she is crazy about her 3 kids, Ashley, Alex, and Savannah." So that's another thing, a brother and a sister now without Ashley. "They all love their mama so much. Please pray that God will give Sabrina and the family the peace that surpasses all understanding. My heart is broken, and I just can't imagine. Ashley was such an amazing worker. She loved working at In-N-Out, and she quickly made it to the top. She would go and train and open up new stores in other states. She loved to travel, but she still lived in Stockton. Ashley, I'm so sorry. We love you so much. We will do our best to protect your mom here until we meet again. Please be your mama's guardian angel." So it sounds like she was an area manager of some kind. And we know that this was a new store. So perhaps she was only in Twin Falls, Idaho to help open this store, get things off the ground to make sure that it was successful. And then sounds like she would have gone back to California. So she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Really, really tragic. Now, her mother, of course, has also put together a GoFundMe page. They're not looking for millions of dollars or anything. They're just looking for a little bit of help to put their daughter in the ground. And looks like they have already surpassed their goal. $50,000 was the goal. They have now surpassed it. Oh, gosh, 666 recent donations. Somebody get in there and help out so it doesn't have to sit there for too long. $50,250 has been raised. Her mother writes, "Both our family and the world are in a state of shock. Our beautiful angel, Ashley, gained her wings while working at In-N-Out at Twin Falls, Idaho. As she was doing what she loved, her life was taken. A call no mother ever wants to get. Ashley was an amazing soul with the most beautiful heart and radiant smile. Please help support our family during this horrific time. All proceeds will go towards laying Ashley to rest in the most beautiful way and any financial expenses related to Ashley. Ashley was a beautiful daughter, sister, auntie, and best friends to everyone she met. She was left a lasting impression on so many souls." Now, I still have not heard anything about the killer himself. And, anytime they don't have like a canned story to release about a person who has committed an action like this, it leads me to believe that it truly was just a crazy person, because the media doesn't seem to be trying to capitalize on it. And of course, I don't think they like it that a good guy with a gun was there at the time, and Jordan Salinas basically scared this guy off. This is from the interview that he did with the local news explaining the situation.
"I peeked around the right-hand side of that sign closest to the road, And that's where I saw the individual with his rifle pointed at the vehicles.
Authorities believe those heroic actions drove the shooter from the scene and likely saved lives.
He seemed unusually comfortable aiming that rifle at those cars. And then as soon as some rounds started coming at him, everything changed. Immediately, all that bravado he had immediately crumbled.
This In-N-Out had opened just a week prior. The company says one of their workers was killed while caring for customers. Christopher Claunch was also killed.
I peeked.
So that's also the first time I've seen any of the other victims being identified. So it was a young man. He appeared to just be like a normal guy. Now, I did see a tweet from 0 Hour, which seemed to, well, I saw a couple of things. There was at least one young man who looked very similar, who was publicly identified as the shooter. He was not the shooter. And so obviously everybody was going and deleting all of those tweets. That's always a horrible thing when somebody gets identified as somebody committing an act like this and it's not them. And then I saw another post which seemed to indicate that the shooter may have had military experience and also may have been an immigrant of some kind from Eastern Europe. But again, there has literally been basically no reporting on this. So just getting back to the situation with Ashley. So the police chief, again, the only thing that I've heard is that this is a 24-year-old by the name of Chad Williams. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The citizen bystander, of course, was Jordan Salinas. And Kimberly, he was from Kimberly, Idaho. And, of course, I told the story previously. He and his brother had been involved in a mall shooting several years ago. And he basically said, his brother's in a wheelchair and he takes care of him. And he said, I don't ever want to get caught in a situation where somebody is going to look at us as easy targets because we're not going to be able to get away and hide really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and train and I'm going to be ready for that time when it happens. So perhaps we'll learn more about Chad Williams and what troubled this young man. Is the hero? Well, it's not necessarily a Palestine scarf. I mean, it's a scarf from the Middle East, but it's not necessarily a Palestine scarf. It's just that people will wear them in the Middle East. And so it has been adopted by those people. I used to have one of those scarves years ago. My dad got it and he gave it to me. He had, a bunch of different scarves. We lived in Michigan, right? So it was cold. And so you needed to have scarves in Michigan. But yeah, it's not originally a Palestine scarf. It just so happens to be a scarf that came from the Middle East. But, there will be a lot of special operators who wear those when they're deployed. So, you'll see guys wearing those if they kind of want to blend in, but it doesn't mean that they're terrorists or they're leftists or they're, Palestine supporters or something like that. All right. Now, this is a story that will undoubtedly make your blood boil, and I wanted to get it out of the way. This man is not out of the woods yet, and the father that is a major part of the story may yet get justice. But the situation we have is a guy by the name of Diego Montoya Gonzalez. He raped an 11-year-old girl, and the father of that 11-year-old girl discovered this crime. He was understandably furious that some adult monster preyed on his child, sexually assaulted his daughter, and he did something that I think a lot of us would do. He posed as his daughter on TikTok, used her account so that he could get this guy, and he was going to attempt to bring him to justice. All right, so on Tuesday, Diego Montoya Gonzalez was shot by the father of the 11-year-old girl. And last month at their Grove City home, this discovery was made. The father and the mother discovered video footage of the child being assaulted. So the day after the footage was found, the child's father posed as his daughter on TikTok, lured Montoya Gonzalez back to their home. And then once he got there, he shot him twice. And I have absolutely no qualms about saying that I think this man's a hero. So the dad, he said he acted in self-defense. He said he only wanted to beat up Montoya Gonzalez, but he saw Montoya Gonzalez reach for a gun first. And so he did what any father would have done in that instance. This man is a criminal. He's a child abuser. He's at his house. Okay, he's reaching for a weapon. The father drew, and he had a quicker finger. But the bad thing about this is that this action that the father took is going to come back and bite him in the ass legally. It's been discovered that he is being charged with felonious assault. And the thing about it is that his bond is set at $100,000. $100,000 is more than the bond that Montoya Gonzalez got for raping an 11-year-old girl. Now, in addition to the footage that was found by the parents of this child being abused by this adult man, investigators also found a number of other videos on Montoya Gonzalez's phone, which showed him sexually assaulting other children. The most disturbing part about this is one of the videos was of an infant or a toddler being abused, again, by this adult man. So Montoya Gonzalez was arraigned in Franklin County Common Pleas Court, and he was charged with a number of very, very horrible felonies. That included rape, pandering, sexually oriented material involving a minor, and obstructing official business. Now, he's pled not guilty on all charges, but he was only given a bond of $70,000 that included a measly $20,000 reconnaissance bond and a $50,000 cash surety bond. So $70,000 after you have been discovered abusing multiple children, taking videos of it, and then if it wasn't for the father catching this guy, Montoya Gonzalez probably would have been out there on TikTok still preying on children, looking to see whom else he could victimize. So why did the judge let this man essentially walk free? He was given a less expensive bond than the father, who was merely protecting his family. It's absolutely insane. So if Montoya Gonzalez is released from jail, there are some stipulations. He's going to have to stay away from the victim's family, but I don't know if he has to stay away from all children. That seems like it would maybe be a pretty important caveat to throw in there. And he is allowed access to the internet, but only for work. Again, how are they going to make sure that he's only using the internet for work? Somebody like this, who is tracking down, grooming, and then assaulting children on the internet, probably has more than one phone. I wouldn't be surprised if this man had a burner that wasn't even attached to his name. So yeah, good luck trying to enforce an order that keeps a pedophile off the internet and allows him to roam free. It is very, very disturbing. I wanted to see if, yes, we should have a little bit more information right here. So this took place in Columbus, Ohio. Lisa, I don't know if you're hearing that, but Columbus, Ohio, Diego Montoya. My name is Diego Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. My name is Indigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Your name is Diego Montoya. You abused my child. Prepare to die.
Today, a man charged with raping an 11-year-old Grove City girl pleaded not guilty. 20-year-old Diego Montoya Gonzalez was arrested after prosecutors say the victim's
Yes, he's still alive. The dad didn't even try to kill him. I mean, anybody else here a gun fanatic? I know exactly what I would have done in that situation.
Mother found a video on her child's phone of the alleged rape. The victim's father accused of luring the suspect back to the home and shooting him.
Gonzalez was in court today before she was sent to Breaking News. 10 TV's Carla Rogner went to that courtroom.
Diego Montoya Gonzalez appeared virtually from Jackson Pike Correctional, but the child's mother and the father, who's accused of shooting him, sat in the courtroom as prosecutors read the charges against him. Detectives began looking into 20-year-old Diego Montoya Gonzalez after the mother of an 11-year-old found a video on her child's phone.
The mother of the victim called Grove City Police to report that her 11-year-old child was sexually assaulted by, at the time, an unknown adult male.
The next day, prosecutors said the child's father lured him back to the home.
The child's father started messaging the defendant on a TikTok account as if he was his daughter. stating that, quote, the daughter, was home alone because, again, quote, her parents had left. At about 6:09, the defendant showed up to the back door of the residence. The father answered the door and ultimately shot the defendant twice.
The child's father sat in the courtroom as Montoya Gonzalez was arraigned. He's charged with felonious assault, but we're not showing him to protect the identity of his daughter. According to a complaint, the father told police he planned to beat Montoya Gonzalez up, hold him, and call for police. But he believed Montoya Gonzalez was reaching for a gun, so he says he shot him. Prosecutors said investigators found multiple videos on Montoya Gonzalez's phone showing the sexual abuse of children, including an infant or toddler. He's charged with rape, pandering sexually oriented material involving a minor, and obstructing official business because prosecutors said he tried to run when he was arrested. A judge gave Montoya Gonzalez a $20,000 recognizance bond and $50,000 cash surety bond. He's also ordered to stay away from the victim's family. Reporting at the courthouse, Carla.
Now, is he only being charged with the one crime? I mean, it didn't sound like he was being charged for the possession of the CP. And they don't mention anything about the other victims. That's what's disturbing to me. He really ought to have the book thrown at him. So the judge who is overseeing this case, I think clearly there needs to be a deeper dive into the rulings they've made in the past. They also don't comment on Diego Montoya Gonzalez's citizenship. So I wonder exactly if that is going to come into play. But good for the father. Hopefully he doesn't get in too much trouble. All right. Now, speaking of protecting children, down here in Florida, we have been attempting to bar children from actually visiting and appearing at and witnessing drag shows and so-called live adult performances. I find it extremely disturbing, and I think it's another form of grooming when people bring kids to an event like this. Those are highly sexualized events, and men dressing like women in clearly provocative outfits, stripping essentially, dancing in a sexualized manner, bringing children up onto the stage to have them get in drag and engage in the same types of lewd behavior as them. It is 100% grooming, and it's one of the more disgusting aspects of what these people do. So there has been an ongoing fight for some time, but now in the 11th Circuit, Judge Brasher writes that the law barring children from not being able to go to these events is now going to stay on the books. We had passed it in the state legislature. Leftists had sued to overturn it, but now it is 100% official. Kids cannot go to these adult entertainment events, and that is just second nature, okay? If you don't understand that, then I don't know what to tell you. All right, and I might as well just tack this one on. So, a transgender reality show star. This person's name is Sydney Starr. I think their real name is Sydney Favors, but they go by Sydney Starr on television. They've been in no fewer than 3 reality programs. I think that these are on E! Or something like that. I don't have cable, so I've never seen these. But this individual, Sydney Starr, was arrested for child molestation and sodomy. And this took place on Sunday. The charges also include sexual battery against a child under 16, aggravated child molestation, and sodomy. The crimes transpired at the Embassy Suites on International Boulevard, and Mr. Starr was actually arrested at the hotel. So, you know, if we didn't know the actual acts that are being accused, then this might have just been a Chris Hansen style To Catch a Predator episode. But this appears to be an actual rendezvous that this adult man living as a woman had with a child under the age of 16. And these acts were clearly engaged in. Otherwise, they would not be charged. So this is a biological male who is on a show called Love and Hip Hop New York and Wildin' Out. and then another one called ATL Baddies. This individual star was booked into the Fulton County Jail in Georgia, and the Fulton County District's Attorney's Office is handling the case. So this was on Sunday. I said he was taken into custody following this incident at the Embassy Suites. The charges I've already read. Favors is still in the custody of the Fulton County Jail. The case is moving forward, and it doesn't sound like they're going to let him out. Now, according to law enforcement, the investigation has now officially been turned over to the Fulton County DA. And, of course, it would really surprise me if this was the first time that Mr. Favors or Mr. Starr had attempted to or successfully met with a child to abuse them in this way. You know, as an adult, you get to this point where you're dressing like a girl, you're going on reality TV, and you're suddenly Breaking Bad. No, I don't believe it. I think that this person was a serial transgressor, and this is just the first time they've gotten caught. Tobias, I see you chatting over there about your divorce, buddy. I'm sorry I didn't know about that. I wish you all the best because I am fully aware of how ugly things can get, especially when kids are involved, bro. So we'll be praying for you. All right. Now, remember when President Trump revealed that members of the mainstream media had been courted by the Chinese Communist Party? They had been brought to China for a cultural exchange visit, and then they had been put on the payroll of the Chinese Communist Party to write unfavorable stories about President Trump in order to weaken his administration, in order to denigrate his position among the American people, and to their hope, elect Joe Biden over President Trump in 2020. Well, Natalie Winters has discovered that it wasn't just members of the mainstream media. No, it was also members of the American military. And this is not just rank and file grunts or turret riders. These are top American generals that apparently formed some type of secret back channel with CCP military intelligence. And then they were instructed to advocate for positions in the American military and government that would be favorable to China. Now, not all of them ended up on China's payroll, but enough of them did. And that, my friends, is treason if I've ever heard of it. Now, this began back in 2008, okay? So this would have been the first year of Obama's presidency. Yeah, Boosie, I am not surprised either. The more and more that comes out, the more and more obvious it is that it seems like everybody but us is out there selling their soul and defrauding the country and committing treason. So the American military participants in this first event were Peter Pace. He was the former Joint Chiefs Chairman. Bill Owens. He was the former Joint Chiefs Vice Chairman. John Abizaid, the former CENTCOM commander. George Casey, the former Army chief. Ray Odierno, another former Army chief. And Jonathan Greenert, another former Army chief. Now, we have images of all of this that were published by the Chinese Communist Party, and this was called the Sanya Initiative. You can see here, and this was under the guise of a nonprofit organization and the typical NGO big money pipeline. Yes, TZ Barton, I did turn off the stream yesterday. And the problem is Rumble Studio. Like, 9 times out of 10, it does exactly what it's supposed to. I hit the end button yesterday and it looked like it ended, but then I came back here. Anyways, there were problems with Rumble yesterday. We will go ahead and verify today that there is no problem. So under the support of this foundation, 2 high-level informal encounters between retired senior military commanders from the U.S. and China took place firstly in Sanya, Hainan, China in 2008, and then in Hawaii, Washington, D.C., and New York in 2009. And then they go on to list all of the military officials. You also had Ronald Fogelman and Norton Schwartz, both Air Force chiefs, Dennis Reamer, former Army chief, Joseph Pruer, a former Pacific Command chief, Timothy Keating, also former Pacific Command chief, and John Keane, a former Army vice chair. And they say here in this document, out of a belief that a sustained and reliable long-term military relationship between China and the U.S. is conducive to both countries' well-being, prosperity, and growth, the Foundation has continued its support of the Sanya Initiative to set up a series of annual informal dialogues that bring together retired senior military officials from China and the U.S. for the purpose of deepening understanding on issues of defense and security and to build stronger personal relations between the participants. In 2012, with the support of the East-West Institute, the fourth meeting was held in Annapolis and attended by all of those various military members. There also appears to be in this image here a Congressman Rick Larson, and Charles Bustani. They were co-chairs of the U.S. House U.S.-China Working Group. Now, them meeting with members of the Chinese government or retired members is not unusual. But for the back channel with retired or even current members of the U.S. military, that is highly concerning, because if they're going to be coming back and advocating for positions and they haven't signed up as a foreign agent, there's all kinds of implications here. There was also Walter Sharp, a former U.S. Forces Korea commander, Charles Jacoby, former Northcom commander, Charles Wilhelm, former Southcom commander, Robert Van Antwerp, former Army Corps of Engineers chief, Stephen Lanza. Oh my God, that's not Adam Lanza's dad, is it? Hold on. Hold on. Adam Lanza, father. No, I think his dad's name was Peter. Yeah, his dad's name was Peter. Different Lanza. Maybe they're related. I don't know. Carl Eikenberry, the retired Army Lieutenant General. They say here the Sanya Initiative is a unique program celebrating a decade of bringing together retired American and Chinese military members to discuss those critical issues. Now, the reason this is such a problem is because there are official channels for these things to happen. China is most certainly and has always been a global adversary, right? And whatever your connections or communications with an adversary like a communist nation are, they need to be reported. Were these connections and conversations reported? I don't know. Bareen Jane, are you serious? Hold on. No, nothing right now. So I don't know. Maybe you're talking about something else. So the back channel began in China in 2008 under the Sanya Initiative. It was funded by CUSEF and conducted with CAIFC, a group congressional investigators identified as a front for the People's Liberation Army Department responsible for political warfare. U.S. investigators said CAIFC carried out intelligence collection and propaganda perception management campaigns. CUSEF is the one who paid journalists for favorable coverage. Now, Bill Owens became the operation's leading American figure. 1 year later, the former Joint Chiefs Vice Chairman was consulting for Huawei and pushing CCP propaganda in U.S. media. You'll remember under President Trump's first term, Huawei was banned from being able to sell the critical cellular infrastructure here in the United States because it was found to have just been loaded up with Chinese spyware and Chinese malware. Owens publicly advanced positions that were favorable to Beijing, which is not surprising considering that was the goal of the Sanya Initiative. He defended Huawei. He demanded America treat China as a friend and questioned U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. I object to Huawei and the way they were treated. He said it's unfair. The secret back channel did not remain confined to retired generals. Within a year, its delegates were sitting face-to-face with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Now, of course, this is something you would expect. The Secretary of State meeting with a delegation from a foreign nation, adversarial or friendly. This is how it's supposed to be done. But we all know Hillary Clinton has her own scurrilous past. The meetings were not confined to ceremonial diplomacy. The delegations discussed nuclear proliferation, terrorism, and military exchanges. By 2012, the operation had reached the U.S. Naval Academy and included sitting members of Congress. CUSEF said Sanya was developed to build stronger personal relations between the participants, and by 2013, it was openly calling the operation an established military-to-military exchange. The closed-door meetings continued through 2019. CUSEF's own records say the Americans and Chinese discussed high-risk issues, including Taiwan and the South China Sea, along with cybersecurity, missile defense, and military strategy. I'm immediately reminded of Trump's general who got on the horn with the Chinese when President Trump was speaking about China openly. What was his name? I can't remember. He's the one who said, "I want to understand white rage. I want to understand white rage." Milley, General Milley, that was his name. Congress was warned about the operation's real objective going all the way back to 2011. The Chinese side says, "We wish you would advocate these positions," a witness testified. American editorials later appeared with a stark similarity to the arguments that Beijing had wanted promoted. The operation never ended. CUSEF's 2023 and 2024 reports show the same closed-door channel continuing under a new label. It was called the U.S.-China Military-to-Military Dialogue. The name changed. The influence network survived. And, of course, Natalie has written a detailed Substack about this on her Substack page. That would be Natalie Winters. I believe she is formerly of the War Room, now just a White House correspondent. All right. Now, if you live in the Pacific Northwest, I wanted to offer a special call for people's safety and prayers because there are fires that are currently raging across Washington. Many different homes have been destroyed. I think tens of thousands of people have had to leave their homes and evacuate. But yesterday, it was reported that these fires were starting and they were ripping their way through Spokane. And the fires are still raging tonight with thousands of people no longer able to stay in their homes. Now, they are being billed as wildfires, and that is an important distinction to make. So we will dive into that in just a moment. But what we do know is that regardless of how they started, at least 700 structures have already burned to the ground. That includes not only homes, but businesses. And the official overall loss is unknown at this time. But Tom Clemo, who is the fire incident commander for this area, said it's unprecedented in this community. Frankly, it's unprecedented in many areas of the country. He did a press conference yesterday with Washington Governor Bob Ferguson. Now, Clemo said that over the last 48 hours, 3 major fires burning in the Spokane area have destroyed all of those structures, but there's still a large question mark about the total loss. Damage assessments in 1,100 areas have been difficult to figure out and are going to require the additional assistance of satellites to determine what the full scope of this disaster is. The next week or so is going to be extremely difficult as we start to grasp the overwhelming amount of damage. Now, before I show you how these fires started, I wanted to take you to this article from The Guardian. The title of their article is "Wildfires Rage Across Washington as drought and heat fuel painful summer. It's not normal." So the clear indication, the insinuation that they're looking to make in this article is that these unusual fires are being fueled by these unusual environmental conditions. Wildfires, of course. Wildfires is what they are being billed as. 15 major blazes were raging across the state, and that is from the head of Washington's Department of Natural Resources. He said it's not a normal season. A confluence of weather conditions, a confluence of fires throughout the West are stretching our resources and challenging the individuals in this response. Now, I've never been to Spokane, but there is 230,000 people who are said to live there. That's in northeastern Washington near the Idaho border. They've been hit the worst out of every place in the state. They had the 3 fires that they were contending with. There have been no deaths that have been reported as yet, but the fires have forced rapid evacuations, and it's unknown at this time if perhaps there will be people who will be found dead. And of course, people's pets may not have gotten out in time. But it turns out that it's probably not from the climate, because there actually has been an arson suspect that was arrested specifically in relation to these wildfires, quote unquote, in Spokane. Now, this is not just any normal person. This is a young man who murdered both of his parents and who went to prison and then got out early. But that's not going to stop them from pushing this climate change agenda narrative. These are not wildfires. They are, of course, unnatural fires that, at least in this instance, appear to have been set by a very disturbed individual. So the Old Trails fire is the one that is gaining the most attention in Spokane. And the fires were spread because of strong winds, and multiple homes, again, have burned. But the corporate media is ignoring the fact, including The Guardian, that a 37-year-old man by the name of Aaron F. Farinacci has been arrested on suspicion of first-degree arson. Yes. Oh, Will, to push forward, you know the story of Aaron F. Farinacci. Well, he didn't get dispatched in prison, and they let him out early despite the fact that he killed his parents in cold blood. So Farinacci, well, he was released by a white female leftist judge who is now retired, and of course, who is also not going to make any comments about her decision. So he was detained by authorities on Saturday, but initially they didn't have enough to keep him, so they released him, and then they picked him up again later after the authorities were able to conclusively link him to those fires. Now, he was found with waterproof matches and some other material that would be useful in starting fires. It's pretty clear that this man never should have gotten out of prison. But it was back in 2010 when he killed his own father. And maybe he didn't kill his mother. Maybe he only shot his mother. But this was back in Mesa, Arizona. Now, he actually shot himself. He tried to kill himself, but, you know, he's a loser. He's a big loser, and he was not successful. So he was discovered several blocks from his parents' home. He shot himself in the chest. He was in critical condition. And police say that around 6 p.m. back in 2010, him and his father got into an argument. Jerry was his father's name. The young man, Aaron, ran into his parents' bedroom and locked his door. The argument was about the dad, Jeffrey, wanting Aaron to do the dishes. Yes, that's right. He wanted Aaron to do the dishes, and Aaron's answer to this was to just kill his father. So his father got a key, unlocked the door, and then when he went into his own bedroom, his wife was also in the house. She heard 2 shots. That's when Aaron killed his father. So she told police her son pointed the gun at her, and as she was going to investigate, but Aaron, I guess, ended up fleeing. So his father's handgun was taken from the nightstand, and then Jeffrey did not die immediately. He ended up dying at the hospital. He was convicted in 2012 of manslaughter and aggravated assault, but he was released in 2020. So currently they're holding him on a $1 million bond. He's going to be making a court appearance today. And again, if it wasn't for these white women that were being appointed as judges, then these people wouldn't be getting out of prison. It's not just white women, okay? It's liberals, but women overwhelmingly, I feel like they seem to think that for some reason these people should be out of prison. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. Thank you to Patty Nine Fingers. Again, judges. And also, if that scumbitch gets out and recommits, the judge should start to be held responsible. The judges should be held responsible, and we're doing that down here in Florida. The problem is the will of the people with the power to do it. But, you know, there's always the fear of walking down the street. It should be that way for all crimes. Liberal judges need to be held accountable. They all need to be impeached. They need to be removed. Patty Nine Fingers also says, make wood chippers great again. Now, TZ Burton, again, thank you for voting, and thank you for that donation. Sean Joe, thank you for 1, 2, 3 cookies and a can. I appreciate it. All right. Now, if you are a Florida voter like me, you may want to listen to this announcement from James Fishback, even if you don't want to vote for James Fishback for whatever reason. James Fishback has been in contact with a credible whistleblower who has brought him evidence implicating Byron Donalds in a felony crime. Byron Donalds, of course, is a representative for the state of Florida in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he is currently running to be the governor of Florida. He is facing off against a full slate of other Republicans in the primary. I believe August 8th is when we go in and vote. I personally, don't really care for Byron Donalds. I feel like the man is fake. I've done a lot of looking into his history. I don't care for it. I know that people can change. However, I feel like Byron Donalds is a fair weather friend to the people of Florida. And more than anything else, he's interested in his own accumulation of power. He is, unfortunately, endorsed by President Trump. So by virtue of that fact, a lot of people are going to vote for him. But I would submit to each and every one of you here, if you're a Florida voter, there have been plenty of other times in the past where we have seen President Trump endorse somebody, and that was the wrong call. President Trump tends to endorse people based upon probability. Okay, he's a betting man. He likes to bet on things that he thinks are going to be a sure thing. But just because President Trump has said, I endorse Byron Donalds, doesn't mean that Byron Donalds has got to be the candidate when it comes down to it. Take a listen to this, and if you don't care for James Fishback, just listen to the message.
Good morning. My name is James Fishback, Republican candidate for Florida governor. I'm speaking to you not as a political candidate, but as a fellow Floridian and a proud American. A whistleblower came to my campaign recently with direct, disturbing evidence about a previously unreported felony crime committed by Byron Donalds. Not Byron Donalds, my opponent, Byron Donalds, the United States Congressman. My legal team has now fully vetted and verified this evidence. It is incontrovertible and it is damning. I will be holding a press conference in my personal capacity as a proud Republican, resident of Florida, and American citizen to share this evidence with the public. Congressman Donalds, I want to speak directly to you for a moment, if I may. You and I both know what you did. Let's just be honest. And if you come to the public and share the full extent of your criminal history, I will cancel my press conference. I believe it's better for them to hear it from you than from me. But if you don't, I will travel to Tallahassee on Thursday, present this evidence, and let the public decide. On matters this urgent, this important, this piercing, I look to the leadership of Governor DeSantis, and that sunshine is always the best disinfectant.
All right. Now, obviously on Thursday, I'm going to be interested in seeing exactly what is said. Just want to remind everybody, tomorrow, my daughter gets into town. I have to pick her up in Orlando. So the show may be a couple of minutes late, but I will do my best to get it scheduled and started at 5 p.m. On Thursday, my uncle's funeral is in another part of Florida. I have to drive to that, so I'm going to be gone all day. I will not be doing a show on Thursday. And then Friday, I already had previously told my daughter that I was going to be taking the day off because she's only here for so many days, and it's her birthday this weekend. So there will be no show on Thursday or Friday. If anything changes, I will let you guys know. But I am eagerly anticipating, looking at this evidence that James Fishback is saying that he's going to present. It does not look to me as if Byron Donalds has responded to this in any way. But in the same way I criticize Katie Hobbs for refusing to debate for the governor's race in Arizona, I have the same criticism of Byron Donalds here in Florida. Byron Donalds refuses to debate with any of the other people who are running for governor. And I think that says a lot. I think anytime a candidate is not willing to stand behind their positions and willing to stand on their convictions and make the case for that to the voters, I think that shows that there is not something good going on. pretty much everybody else has been willing to debate, and they've been willing to, talk about these positions that they have, and also to talk about the various controversies that they have. That would be the best thing that Byron Donalds could do. And maybe he could change my mind. I don't know. But he won't talk, and he'll only do campaign events. It's just not a good thing. All right. Now, this is a wonderful idea, and I wanted to put it on your radar because I think that this is something that the administration needs to do. The opt visa is a visa that is significantly eating into the available job market for American graduates. So the Trump administration is looking at attaching another $100,000 fee to the optional practical training visa. This is the program that allows international students to work on their student visas for the time after they graduate. Now, of course, what usually ends up happening is that after that opt visa runs out, they can transition to another visa. They've already got a job at a company, and oftentimes they have these jobs set up well before they graduate, whereas Americans are left, sending out applications all over the place, and they have a very difficult time getting into the job market. So the Trump administration is considering attaching this $100,000 price tag to these international students' ability to work in the U.S. Obviously, that would significantly restrict the number of these students that would be able to come and take advantage of that opt visa. Now, the fee, if enacted, would significantly advance President Trump's efforts to restrict every form of legal immigration. He has done a great job on that so far, but there are several different categories of visas which still continue to bring in foreigners that I believe are doing damage to the country and also taking opportunities away from Americans. The one thing that I did not know is that the opt visa is not a legislative visa. It was not enacted by Congress. This is a function of the executive branch. So essentially, President Trump and the administration could end opt altogether if they wanted to. I like the idea of the $100,000 fee. That means that far fewer people are going to take advantage of the opt visa. But I think that we should just get rid of the opt visa altogether. So if people want to go ahead and maybe tweet at President Trump, then we could go ahead and see about getting that onto his radar. Now, Chief Engineer is a great follow. I would suggest that everybody follow him. He's doing a lot of work to bring attention to all of these different categories of visas. He says, yeah, but then he'll be sued just like the H-4 EAD. But it is worth sunsetting. The best part of all is that all the opt investigations would go away with the program. It frees up investigators to go after the other abuses like fraudulent applications. Now, this person writes, ending opt lends meaningful credibility to the claim that Trump is attempting to put Americans first while battling the swamp. The other obstacles that he's overcome, the H-1B fee, the interior deportations, tariff, the SAVE Act, all of that can be blamed on a feckless cohort of rhinos and activist judges with some degree of legitimacy. But opt does not have that hurdle. It directly impacts employment and affordability locally, but for some reason, the permit still exists. Every day that passes without GOP ending opt prior to midterms is a strategic blunder in more ways than one, and it hurts Americans and it hurts campaigning. Now, I just want to go to Chief Engineer's account here because he had posted a letter to his mother, and I thought it was rather touching. Let me see. Where is it? Okay. I guess he's a fairly prolific poster. It was posted over the weekend. So, where is it? Here we go. Okay. Dear Mother and Father, I am finishing my last semester. Everything is going better than we hoped. I already secured an opt. Oh, this is one of the this is one of the immigrants writing to him. Hang on. Oh gosh, I wish I would have pulled this up before I thought about doing it while I was live. I know that I saved it. Maybe it was from some time ago, or maybe he deleted it. I don't know. Basically, it was just him writing to his mom about how difficult it was to get a job. You know, the fact that he went through and did his degree, he got better grades than anybody else, and he was basically stuck without an opportunity because all of these foreigners that were in school with him had already secured all the jobs. Thank you so much to ZBM, who says, I'm like 2.5 hours away from Spokane in Idaho, and it's been unusually cool this summer, especially for the end of July and now August. So yeah, it's dry, but where I'm at, it's definitely not hot. I think that it's more likely that the matches are the cause of the flames. RL Skeeter, sir, thank you very much for that $50 rant. Hello, Zak Groupies. I will call for a rant challenge to show Zak we appreciate his dedication, humor, and laughter. Happy birthday to your daughter. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you for that generous donation. Deb Worth, good to see you, Deb. I've been following Fishback for months. He is a grifter. He is a racist and an anti-Semite. He actions during his campaign, borderline Antifa actions. In my opinion, he is a fraud infiltrating the Republican Party. Like I said, if you don't like James Fishback, I'm only talking about the information related to Byron Donalds. I don't think that James Fishback is going to be the candidate when it comes down to it. I think that Jay Collins is a far better choice. He's DeSantis's lieutenant governor. He's also a patriot. And anyways, there are things that James Fishback has as his positions that I definitely agree with. But I think he's too controversial in the things that he does and says. They don't lend themselves to winning. Warrior Mima says, I've been considering voting for Collins for governor. I don't much care for Donalds either. If you won't debate, he's hiding something. Collins is honestly my guy. All right. Let me jump into the next story here, which is also related to immigration. So, the University of Maryland, their School of Pharmacy, they employed a professor by the name of Berhanu Kibret, and they are very, very upset, greatly troubled, because this professor was arrested by ICE at a Dallas airport. Why, you might ask? Well, he overstayed his visa. He is an illegal alien from Ethiopia, and he somehow was able to gain employment at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. He was arrested last month at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, and there is now outrage in the left-wing media. He was here illegally. He had no business to be here. If he wanted to be here legally, then he could have secured those documents to make sure that he wasn't going to be arrested. But I told you, ICE is hanging out at the airports waiting for people like this who have this sense of entitlement, thinking that even though they're not legal, they have a job, they have status, they have connections, they can go ahead and just continue to act like business as usual. But it's not business as usual. If you're an illegal alien and you're here in this country for any reason, I don't care if you got a family, I don't care if you got a job, I don't care if you have people that are friends in high places like the administration at the University of Maryland, you do not have the right to be here. It is not my responsibility to feel bad for you when you get what's coming to you. You break the law, you violate the compact between America and the people we allow to come here, and you're on your own, buddy. So he is an Ethiopian professor at the School of Pharmacy. He was here illegally on an overstayed visa. That visa expired over 2 years ago, back in May of 2024. Now, according to the university, he was, quote, returning from a meeting of the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy, where he received a Teacher of the Year award. Well, great. Why couldn't he receive a green card in the last several years? The university says that they are greatly troubled and that Kibret has a valid work authorization. Nope, he doesn't. They say valid work authorization as if this is somehow more important than your naturalization paperwork or your green card or another visa, which actually is what allows you to work here. So you may have had valid work authorization, but now you are an illegal alien. Your visa expired 2 years ago and you decided to do nothing about it. So the university said that they are greatly troubled and that Kibret has this valid work authorization, so it is our hope that any issues surrounding his status will be quickly resolved. They'll be resolved all right, and he'll be put on a plane straight back to Ethiopia. However, the Department of Homeland Security, again, described him as an illegal alien. Geresu Kibret entered the country on June 1st, 2021, on a visa set to expire on May 31st, 2024. Against our nation's laws, he overstayed his visa, he failed to depart, he will remain in ICE custody pending his immigration proceedings, and being in detention is a choice. He had the choice to not break the law, and he chose not to. We encourage all illegal aliens to take control of their departure with the CBP Home app. The United States is offering illegal aliens $2,600 and a free flight to self-deport now. Now, the University of Maryland said in a statement, Dr. Kibret is a highly valued member of the University of Maryland and the Baltimore community, describing him as an effective and beloved teacher and a highly regarded colleague. His detention has generated not only great sympathy for his plight, but also a heightened sense of apprehension here on campus. This follows news that a Johns Hopkins University researcher from Cameroon was detained while also boarding a flight at Baltimore-Washington Thurgood Marshall International Airport on July 28th. Good Lord, that's a mouthful. The Cameroon native, Fatima Amiaka, was later released from custody. Why? Why were they released from custody? So, per multiple sources, ICE made roughly 51,000 immigration arrests during the month of July. That's an average of 1,645 per day and the highest single month of arrests that agency has ever recorded. This comes as ICE made roughly 43,000 arrests in the month of June. That was the also record at that time. But the bottom line, ICE has now notched back-to-back months of their highest arrest totals in agency history after a brief dip in the numbers in the aftermath of Minneapolis and the DHS shutdown. Thousands of new ICE hires are hitting the streets as we speak, and the agency's coffers are plush with billions of dollars in cash after 2 reconciliation bills to fund them during President Trump's second presidency. Now, we also have word from the Department of Justice on the latest round of denaturalizations. 25 complaints have been filed since July 20th, which again marks the largest denaturalization effort ever. Todd Blanche said, U.S. citizenship is one of our nation's highest privileges, and it must be obtained lawfully and honestly. The complaints announced today allege that these individuals secured naturalization through fraud, concealment, or other unlawful conduct, which includes concealing of violent crimes, sexual offenses against children, fraudulent identities, and other disqualifying acts. Today's filings represent the largest coordinated denaturalization effort in department history, but they are only the beginning. The Justice Department will continue to use every tool available to protect the integrity of the naturalization process and the safety of the American people. So let's take a look and see who we are bidding adieu. All right, so we've got Zia Murad Bhatti, also known as Raza Murad, a resident of Conway, Arkansas. He committed immigration fraud in his naturalization proceedings. He entered illegally in 1992. He was ordered removed, but he didn't leave. Instead, he got married to a U.S. citizen and sought permanent resident status based on that marriage using the other name, Zia Murad Bhatti. In naturalization proceedings, he concealed the fact that he used another identity and he was ordered removed. Tatiana Power, she's from Moldova. Oh, Zia is from Pakistan. Tatiana Power is from Moldova, and she was filed a case in the Southern District of Florida. She's a resident of Florida. She committed crimes involving the sexual abuse of children before she became a U.S. citizen. She entered the U.S. in 2005, naturalized in 2010. In 2021, she was charged with several counts related to her participation in a business selling images and videos depicting the abuse of children on numerous websites. Narinder Singh from India. He used a fraudulent identity to gain admission to the United States. He used 2 identities to gain admission back in 1996 and then naturalized in 2008. And he also had 7 counts for numerous misrepresentations and unlawful acts that adversely reflect his moral character. Emidguido Sanchez from Mexico, he had a case filed against him in South Carolina. He beat and choked his wife. He was arrested, and then he lied about it to immigration authorities. This was back in 1998. So this guy really was set up here with a life. I don't care. Luisa Fernandez Ordonez from Colombia. She failed to disclose in her naturalization proceedings that she obtained her permanent residence as a result of marriage fraud, and she was married to 2 men simultaneously. Jonathan Omorgriva Obashan from Nigeria. He was filed in the District of Massachusetts. He obtained his citizenship using a fake identity. He was already subject to an order of deportation prior to that with his real identity, and he obviously lied to the government. Enos Fong Corti from Liberia. Mr. Corti immigrated to the U.S. as the unmarried child of a U.S. citizen. However, Corti was married and ineligible to immigrate under that status. So Mr. Corti lied about his marital status to immigration officials during the visa process to hide that ineligibility. And then when it came time to naturalize, he again lied. They found out he's going back to Liberia. Yatunde Folake Oliani, Nigeria. Oliani, also known as Folake Rosemary Thomas, was ordered removed from the U.S., and rather than report for her scheduled removal flight, she adopted the identity of Folake Rosemary Thomas and entered into a sham marriage with a U.S. citizen. And then through this sham marriage, concealing her identity, she conducted a number of other crimes, including passport fraud, finger check fraud, and, of course, the naturalization process was moot because she lied. Mohad Wasif from Pakistan. He, an individual, obtained residence in the U.S. by lying about his eligibility. During his naturalization proceedings, he concealed the use of a second identity. Esther Quayle from Ghana. She stole the identity of a U.S. citizen, and then obviously that made her ineligible. Dwayne Robinson from Jamaica. Dwayne shot and attempted to murder another man, leading to his conviction for attempted first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon and the intent to kill, inflicting serious injury. That was in 2013. While awaiting trial, he was discharged from the U.S. Army, and he had earlier obtained U.S. citizenship on the basis of that military service, but because he was discharged under an other than honorable condition prior to serving honorably in the military for that total of 5 years, he's now deportable. Yi Li from Taiwan. Yi Li masterminded a marriage fraud ring prior to naturalizing. He exploited U.S. immigration laws by putting U.S. citizens with alien beneficiaries in sham marriages. Eddie Jones Appa from Ghana failed to disclose in the naturalization proceedings that he had already entered and had been deported prior to that under a different identity. Jose Luis Martinez Zavala failed to disclose in his naturalization proceedings that he had previously sexually assaulted a minor. In 2014, he hid that from the government, and that in 2010, he had committed this aggravated sexual assault of a child. Looks like that happened in Texas. Vivian Chike Obeshere from Nigeria. She was naturalized in 2013 and represented through her proceedings that she had never committed crimes and that she was never arrested, but she had used only one alias while in the United States. She took no trips out of the United States and had never given misleading information to a U.S. official. However, later, she pled guilty to false application and use of a passport and admitted the falsity of all of those attestations. And she admitted that she had concealed during her naturalization proceedings that she had applied for a passport with the name of another person who was a U.S. citizen. Jose Francisco Cruz, he, between December 28th, 1995 and June 6th, 1998, sexually abused his minor stepdaughter, committed a whole bunch of other heinous acts. Obviously, get him the hell out. Francois Ngese Dame, he illegally procured his naturalization by concealment of a material fact or willful misrepresentation. He also sexually abused his minor stepdaughter. What is it with the Honduras and Africa? Seems like they're Pedophiles all over. Haitham A. Mustafa from Jordan, beginning in November 1999 and continuing until after his naturalization in 2001, he engaged in credit card fraud using fraudulently obtained cards under at least one false name. They also coincided with a bank fraud scheme that occurred after his naturalization. He pled guilty in May of 2006. He was found guilty on the credit card fraud and one count of bank fraud. He was sentenced to a term of 25 months imprisonment, and he must have been out of prison for some time, and they just caught up with him. Jairo Javier Padron Tellez from Cuba. He failed to disclose in his proceedings that he had committed bank fraud and engaged in aggravated identity theft prior to naturalizing, beginning in 2015. Carlos Ernesto Garron from El Salvador. He filed a civil denaturalization complaint in the District of Maryland because he was convicted of sexual abuse of a minor for criminal acts committed against two minors between 2005 and 2010. Juan Camilo Montoya, Colombia. He was dishonorably discharged from the Marine Corps before accruing the necessary period of honorable conduct after naturalizing. He lied in order to naturalize, and he pled guilty via a court-martial to the possession and distribution of child pornography before that time had passed, which, of course, tainted his entire service. Cantave Prevalence from Haiti. He began having sexual intercourse with his own minor biological child against the child's will and concealed the crime. And, of course, he is a sick bastard, and we want to see him go. Looks like there were a number of sexual battery convictions as well. Syed Tanweer Ahmed from Sweden. Not a Swedish name. He must have emigrated to Sweden prior to emigrating to the United States. He failed to disclose that he had committed grand theft against multiple victims and falsely represented for years, both to the public and his victims, that he was a medical practitioner. Oh my gosh, a fake doctor like Syed in Michigan. Miguel Eduardo Romero from El Salvador. He became a U.S. citizen over the course of several years, also repeatedly sexually abused a minor, his own granddaughter, while she was in his care. Manuel Antonio La Rosa Lopez, 68, from Peru. He lived in Houston, Texas, received his naturalization based on the representation that he had never committed a crime, when, in fact, prior to his naturalization, he had committed acts constituting indecency with the child under Texas Penal Code. And he was charged with, after his naturalization, pled guilty, is currently serving a 10-year prison sentence, but they're just doing it ahead of time and getting rid of him right now. I love it. Get rid of these people. Now, this latest round of denaturalization brings the total to 123 cases filed in the last 18 months. To put this into context, only 305 denaturalization cases were filed from 1990 until 2017, 27 years, and only 305 people lost their right to remain U.S. citizens. Fewer than 150 were successful between 1967 and 2017, over the course of 50 years. So we are right now living in the era of denaturalization, and they are not stopping anytime soon. This is going to continue. Under Joe Biden, during his 4 years, there was only a total of 64 people. In the first Trump administration, throughout the total 4 years, there was only 168. We are edging up on President Trump's first 4-year total for denaturalizations. So if we're going on this, then we are probably going to hit larger than that 305 that were over the course of 50 years. Good stuff. All right. Now, I want you to take a look at this interaction that Senator Bernie Moreno had with a professor from Georgetown. This guy is all about the American people paying for illegal aliens. And he, of course, is unable to support his positions when confronted with them in the course of this Senate hearing, which I believe took place earlier today.
Mr. Schneider, if somebody's in this country without permission, should they be allowed to get health care on the backs of the American taxpayer? Yes or no?
My own view is if people need health care, they should receive it.
So you think that somebody who is here illegally should have their health care paid for by the American taxpayer?
So we have a law in this country.
No, I'm just asking you. That's a simple yes or no question. Somebody's in this
I
country.
agree with
somebody's. Let me just restate it. So
yes, if they need emergency care, yes.
So the taxpayer, the United States of America, should pay for the health care of people who broke into this country illegally.
That's what Congress decided in 1980.
No. Congress never decided. No, what Congress you're talking about. If you needed emergency health care and you went to any other country on earth, would you get it for free?
Well, the countries that I've gone to, yes.
You'd get health care for free if you went into it. So, for example, let's take Spain, which has incredibly difficult visa standards. If you went to Spain and needed heart surgery, you think the Spanish government would give it to you gratis?
I can't speak to Spain.
But do you think but it's interesting. I wonder if my Democrat colleagues would agree with that. That if people who broke into this country illegally should get health care. Mr. Snyder, if somebody broke into your home, would you make them dinner?
No, I would not.
Why not? Why not? Why wouldn't you? They need help. What if they're starving? What if somebody broke into your home who's hungry? Would you not feed them? Or would you call the police and get the heck out of the house?
If somebody was hungry and needed to be fed, I would feed them.
So if somebody broke into your house, you will feed them. Don't give anybody your address.
So
whatever you do, I'm asking you just for your own personal sake,
if
do
I could
not
answer,
release your address.
No. If somebody broke into this guy's house, chances are pretty good he would try to call the cops. All right. He would not put up with it. Nobody would put up with it. Okay. And there's a reason that people like him have gated communities that they live in. There's a reason that people like him, Kamala Harris, Governor Gavin Newsom, have wrought iron fences and gates around their property. There's a reason why people like him have at-home security systems, sophisticated cameras, probably have a direct line to the police so that they can have somebody come out there and save them. He probably wouldn't own a firearm, might have like maybe a 22 or something like that. But this points out the tremendous hypocrisy when it's the American people that are on the hook, not him directly. He's okay with it. But as soon as it's him directly that needs to be on the hook, of course not. No, I wouldn't do that. Now, for more than a year, President Trump has maintained the lowest refugee levels in American history. 99.9% of the refugees that have been allowed into our country have been white South Africans. These are the people that we have spoken about for years on this channel. And I cannot tell you how much it just warms my heart to see the plight of the Afrikaners finally being addressed by a government on the world stage. For years, these people have had their farms stolen. They have watched as masked men have broken into their homes, raped their wives and children, killed their dogs, killed the fathers in front of the kids, set their farms on fire, subjected them to the absolute worst type of behavior. Okay, a true genocide. But because it's happening to white people, the mainstream media won't admit to it. Western governments won't acknowledge it. And President Trump is the first leader in the Western world to admit that this is happening and give the Afrikaners a place to go. Now, there are some Afrikaners who obviously want to stay in South Africa. We have a couple of viewers from South Africa, and, you know, South Africa is their home. That's where they want to stay. I can't begrudge them that. But many of these people have been forced off of their lands. Many of these people are being forced to live on the streets. Many of these people have essentially been driven into poverty. And when you have nothing, then what do you have to stay for? So I welcome all of them. And the government of South Africa is a failed state. Since apartheid ended, the Black South Africans that have run South Africa have run it into the ground, and they have continued to use the excuse of apartheid and the existence of the white Afrikaners as a point of blame. Okay, you can't blame the Afrikaners for what's happening in South Africa right now. When the whites were in charge in South Africa, it was a functioning nation. Employment was much, much higher. Inflation was much, much lower. Safety was much, much higher. Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. Nelson Mandela and his wife were part of a group that would take people, put tires around their bodies so that they couldn't get away and they couldn't escape, and then they would light them on fire. Okay, these people are monsters, absolute monsters. Nelson Mandela is not some paragon of virtue to be remembered in history. That man was a terrorist, and you will never convince me different. Nancy K. Reese says, I challenge anyone who wants open borders to remove all the doors and windows from their home. Absolutely. Thank you to BE12, who says, thanks for all the work you do. We all appreciate you. Thank you. I really appreciate you as well. Principled Enigma says, this is my second $25 rant, matching the $50 challenge. Principled Enigma, brother, thank you as always. Thank you so much. And then also, thank you to No Thanks Joe, who says, thank you so much, Zach and Lisa. It's Happy Tuesday and always love your work. God bless. Be safe. Appreciate you, homie. Thank you to Sean Joe for the other cookie as well. All right. So we are minimizing the number of people who are coming into this country from every possible angle that we can. So I feel really good with what President Trump is doing, despite all of the efforts that the activist judges are undertaking to try to stop him, despite the fact that they are ignoring orders from the Supreme Court. Ultimately, this will get resolved, but it's just unfortunate that it's taking as long as it is. In the meantime, continue to save the Afrikaners. Now, President Trump previously had thrown his support behind Darlene Graham when she was the only person who was in the race. Well, you know, the typical deep state politicos in South Carolina smelled blood in the water, smelled an opportunity, and a couple of other people got into the race after her brother, Lindsey Graham, died. So she participated in a debate the other night. And unlike her brother, Darlene says she is in favor of nuking the filibuster and, of course, staying in D.C. instead of going on vacation for a month again. And President Trump has thrown his full-hearted endorsement behind her once again. He said, it was my honor to welcome now Senator Darlene Graham Nordone, the sister of the late, great Lindsey Graham from the wonderful state of South Carolina, into the Oval Office. We have known each other for a long time. She is a spectacular person and a true American patriot. Lindsey was one of the greatest people and senators I have ever known, and his sister shares his deep love of our country and the state of South Carolina. During her visit, I asked Darlene, for the good of our nation, to run for the U.S. Senate in the special Republican primary on Tuesday, August 11th. She accepted, as there is nobody better to honor the legacy of her beloved brother, Lindsey. Darlene, who comes from an absolutely incredible family, has been a winner all of her life, and she has my complete and total endorsement in the special election for the U.S. Senate in South Carolina. She will never let you down, President Donald J. Trump. Now, the positions she has are not even controversial. Okay, this is at a bare minimum what I want to hear people say, but take a listen.
Said earlier, I'm willing to stay through recess to get it done. What's up with recess anyway? Who gets a month off from work? I think we should stay up there and work and get it done. You have to have an ID to check out a library book, to buy alcohol, and you don't have to have an ID to vote. That's absurd. In New Jersey, they had 6,600 people, non-citizens registered to vote, and several hundred of them did vote in our election. And I am all for, this is where I differ from my brother, getting rid of the filibuster to get this done, because eventually the Democrats are going to get rid of it anyway. All right, our next question.
All right. So, yeah, bare minimum. That sounds like what I want to hear. I don't think anybody else who's running for Senate in this race in the special election is interested in nuking the filibuster. And, you know, it's a good thing she wants to stay home and continue to work on getting the SAVE Act passed and getting anything else passed that they possibly can. All right. Now, yesterday we touched on the situation with Judge Jeanine Pirro. Well, it's just gotten a little bit worse. It's been revealed that after President Trump blasted Jeanine Pirro for dropping those charges against David Hearn, Apparently, she has dropped charges against several other people who were accused of doing the exact same thing. So Jeanine Pirro actually appeared with she went to the White House to visit President Trump. But he said that she had choked. I was disappointed with Pirro, really disappointed. She folded like an umbrella, and people get away with things. It's such a disgrace. After the press conference where President Trump made those comments, Jeanine Pirro was spotted at the White House. She was actually like carrying like a travel bag with like boxes and a whole bunch of stuff. People were speculating that she had just been fired and maybe that was her moving her stuff out. But it would appear that maybe she was just showing up to the Oval Office with case documents to go over them with President Trump. So she apparently met with President Trump and Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum. Doug Burgum oversees a portion of the government that is in charge of the reflecting pond and all the national monuments. And they entered at different times, but it looks likely that they were all speaking at the same time. She, however, was not fired, and she did not offer her resignation. But I want to know, why did she dismiss the charges against initially David Hearn and then Justin Carreno, Sophie Dennison Gibby, and Cameron Tiers, all of them who were accused of vandalizing the reflecting pool? If we look at court documents, her office moved to dismiss all three cases last Friday at the exact same time that she moved to dismiss the cases against Hearn. But there is still hope, because over a dozen people have been arrested or cited for the suspected vandalism on the reflecting pool. And it would have been nice to get a conviction of David Hearn. He was the most notable. That grand jury saw fit in D.C. to indict him in numerous instances. I don't care that he was a three-time Olympic canoeist. I don't care that, people might know his name. Actually, I do care that people know his name. That has more psychological value to see somebody like that be prosecuted and then punished for doing something like that. So Emily Miller is the independent journalist who caught his arrest on camera. She during the summer. She's the one who shared it on X and said, he was vandalizing the pool and tried to impede workers who were cleaning the pool. He grabbed the hose that a female National Park Service worker was using to clear the algae. But apparently that wasn't enough. The U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro had previously accused Hearn of violently and forcefully ripping up the sealant, and she said on Friday instead that it was a flawed installation by the contractor that was responsible for the damage. I don't know if that's the case, but if that's her opinion, then perhaps there is more to this story. It was not until after the return of the indictment of Hearn that the Department of Interior provided additional documents to the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., indicating that the damage to the pool was the result of a flawed installation by the contractor, Atlantic Industrial Coatings, and the rush to complete the project prior to events associated with the America 250 celebration. That's the official statement from Judge Jeanine. So I think we need to hear a little bit more about it. But I hope that there are still opportunities to bring people to justice. R.L. Skeeter, that is an old rant. I don't know why that's coming up again, but thank you again, friend. Appreciate that. All right. Now, this is a story that was actually on my radar last week, but the information about why this raid happened did not come out. We have a little bit more now. So a home in Beverly Hills was raided by the FBI and searched in the 600 block of North Cannon Drive last Tuesday, July 28th. This is a pretty nice house. You can take a look right here. You see, it's a palatial estate, they say. Big mansion with those wrought iron gates. They don't want the homeless defecating on their lawn or doing intravenous drugs on their doorstep. No, that's for the plebs. So this mansion was raided as part of a series of search warrants that were executed by federal authorities to curb Chinese government influence in the region. So the raids targeted homes and offices across Southern California, not only this mansion, but properties that are tied to Ontario Council member Alan Wapner, San Bernardino County Supervisor Kurt Hagman, attorney Frank Lizarraga, Parkcrest Construction, and James Su, who was the founder and president of EDI Media Incorporated. They style themselves as the largest Chinese-American multimedia company in the United States. Now, Su has publicly documented ties to the Chinese state media and organizations that are connected to Beijing's overseas influence efforts. A federal grand jury has been convened for this investigation, and there have been a number of subpoenas that have been issued at the Ontario International Airport and Ontario City Hall, that is Ontario, California. Wapner and Hagman both serve on the airport authority. So, recent examples include investigations involving the former mayor of Arcadia, Eileen Wang. You probably remember her. There were allegations surrounding efforts that she was involved in to promote Chinese electric bus manufacturer BYD in Lancaster, California. So it seems that the ongoing influence of China in California is still being investigated and rooted out by the Trump administration. Definitely going to keep my eyes on that. All right, which brings us to today's main event, the presence of Assistant AG Colin McDonald and the official DOJ Anti-Fraud Investigation Task Force. Colin McDonald says that they are now announcing a new strike team that is expanding into Philadelphia, and they made this announcement in conjunction with the announcement of a slew of indictments, and we'll talk about that right after this.
As another step in our growth
Hold on, that is very quiet.
plan, we are announcing today that our Northeast Healthcare Strike Force team is expanding here to Philadelphia. This will place dedicated fraud prosecutors right here to further root out the fraud in Pennsylvania. This district has a long-standing tradition of not only prosecuting egregious frauds like the ones charged today, but also a history of excellent corporate enforcement, both civilly and criminally. In fact, today the U.S. Attorney's Office is announcing charges against not only individuals, but a company, a home health agency that participated in the fraud. We are proud to join in partnership with U.S. Attorney Metcalf to ramp up our collective efforts to root out fraud here in Philadelphia and across Pennsylvania. This remains the early stages of the build-out of our fraud-fighting team, with the support of President Trump, Vice President Vance, and the White House Task Force to Eliminate Fraud, Acting Attorney General Blanche, and the entire fraud-fighting apparatus. The Department of Justice will continue expanding our reach across the country to pursue all fraud, no matter how large, no matter how small, no matter how hard.
Now, you might wonder just how much fraud did they find? They haven't even really started yet. This is all preliminary. But the DOJ is already charging 19 defendants in a $4 million Philadelphia Medicare and Medicaid fraud ring. So this announcement came earlier today at that press conference, and they are now expanding their Northeast Healthcare Fraud Strike Force to Philadelphia. And federal and state authorities are now targeting these alleged Medicare and Medicaid fraud involving home health care services. The expansion establishes the Strike Force office in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and it brings together the Department of Justice's National Fraud Enforcement Division along with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the district so that they can better investigate and prosecute these people. So this announcement was that federal and Pennsylvania authorities are charging these 19 defendants. They're accused of participating in schemes involving more than $4 million in claims that were submitted to Medicare and Medicaid. And the defendants include home health care company owners, their employees, aides, and also Medicaid recipients. The Pennsylvania Attorney General Dave Sunday also announced a plea agreement involving the final defendant in a previously charged 21 defendant case that was tied to more than $1.7 million in claims. Now, the Justice Department announcing this fraud expansion was announced in this statement right here. The Fraud Division's expansion into the Eastern District of Pennsylvania brings enhanced federal resources to a district with an established tradition of strong healthcare fraud enforcement. The partnership between the Fraud Division and the Eastern District of Pennsylvania will uniquely enable law enforcement to combat criminals who hide behind corporations to commit fraud. The cases include allegations that home health aides billed Medicaid for services while they were incarcerated, hospitalized, working other jobs, or traveling overseas. So these are people whose names were being used to bill for Medicaid services when they could not reasonably have even received them. In another case, prosecutors said a Medicaid recipient claimed to require extensive home health assistance while at the same time they were working out of the home as a carpenter. Other defendants allegedly submitted overlapping or impossible work hours, including claims which exceeded 24 hours of care in a single day. One home health care agency and its owners were also charged with allegedly billing Medicaid for false clock-ins and clock-outs. The strike force's expansion makes clear that the fraud division will use every available legal tool to identify, investigate, and prosecute offenses against the American people. So the Philadelphia office will be working with the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General, the FBI, the DEA, and a number of other law enforcement agencies. That's what's so cool about the strike forces. They bring together people from all of these different federal agencies so that they can pool their resources and go after these people and take them down. So the DOJ said the expansion follows recent additions to the strike force program that we've talked about before in California, Arizona, Nevada, Massachusetts, Minnesota. They don't have Maine on there, but they need to put it on there, as well as 2 national healthcare fraud enforcement actions involving more than $15 billion in alleged losses in 2025 and more than $6 billion in losses in 2026. Now, if you'll notice on the thumbnail of this show, I mentioned how the number one business in California, New York, and Pennsylvania is this type of fraud. And I got that information from Dr. Oz right here. So we're going to watch this entire clip because he goes into some pretty lurid details. Over 96% of personal care claims in Pennsylvania are not actually listed specifically. They just write illness unspecified, which means that it becomes impossible to track the information. The average payments per beneficiary in Pennsylvania add up to more than $50,000, which is only possible if you are committing fraud.
Now, we're facing a personal care services crisis around the country. The surge in enrollment of individuals in these programs is stunning. So shocking, we have to double check our numbers. We don't think it's possible that it's happening, but it is. In California and New York, the number one job in the entire state is personal care services. Guess what? It's good to be home because it's true in Pennsylvania too. 50% dramatically more people serving in the personal care services space, that's home care, than is in retail. That's where Pennsylvanians are going. It's becoming a jobs program. Medicaid fraud in the state is costing taxpayers for care that was never delivered, or even worse, harmful. It's costing patients their health, their trust in a system that was built in a high-trust environment, a place we all thought that we would be able to be safe because who would steal from the poor? As Colin outlined, many people, unfortunately, are doing just that, and we're coming after them. What we're exposing today is a diabolical breach of trust, a violation of the sacred bond between patient and caregiver. It is a catastrophe that can only be dealt with in the way we'll be outlining for the rest of this presentation. Today's defendants included an aide who billed Medicaid for care claimed to be delivered while they were in jail or while they were being arrested or while they weren't in the country. The list goes on, one more disbelievable than the next. And it's not just individuals. There's a home care agency, 2 owners who are charged with billing Medicaid hundreds of fabricated clock-ins. Again, care that was never delivered at all. And we have evidence of that. CMS's job is to make sure.
Can you imagine having the balls to bill for more than 24 hours in a single day? To bill when the patient is in jail or out of the country? I mean, the balls on these people, they obviously felt 100% safe doing this. They were so emboldened by the fact that they've been able to get away with this fraud for so long. They just figured nobody is ever going to catch us, so we're just going to take advantage of it as long as we possibly can.
Sure this money reaches the people who actually need it. That's the grandmother who desperately needs this money to stay out of a long-term care facility. It could be a vet who relies on this to get help because he's stuck in bed. All these individuals deserve our love and support, not the criminals who have hurt them. We've reviewed Pennsylvania's personal care billing trends. I'm going to give these numbers to you slowly because they're really important. This is the federal government's data on Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania ranks 5th nationally in average monthly payments, both per beneficiary and per provider. That is way out there. Be number 5 in both those categories. More expensive, that is, in 45 states. Over 96% of personal care claims here are illness unspecified. That's how they're titled. So we can't track them. It doesn't help if the U.S. Attorney or the Attorney General can't possibly find the fraud because people aren't actually telling us what they're really doing. We have to change that history that's evolved here into the norm. And finally, average payments per beneficiary, more than $50,000. Think about that, $50,000 per person getting home care in the state on average, far above what you'd ever expect. All this points to fraud. The cases like these are exactly why a whole government approach is so critical and why we have to develop best practices of how to evolve this system. You're going to be hearing from Dan Brillman in a second. He runs Medicaid. He's going to touch on another problem that's a big one in Pennsylvania, which is autism care services, and why they're, again, not only are they off the chart in Pennsylvania, but the rest of the country, but we are actually here to help. We're giving you a toolkit that will allow the state to be able to tell what's good, what's not, what's foul, what's fair, so we can identify the best use of our funds. Yesterday, I was in Maine. We're investigating home supply.
Oh, yes, they're going to Maine. Sweet. I guarantee you we're going to have an announcement just like this. The strike force is going to set up in Maine as well. Sorely needed.
Support services, just like you're seeing here for adults in that case who have autism. Medicaid spending of the top 10 providers there has dramatically increased over the last 6 years. In fact, across the board, if you look at fraud in healthcare, all gone up in the last six years. What happened in 2020 that has catalyzed this? What has allowed
the pandemic?
Allow this corruption to be weaponized? It's COVID. COVID appears to have unleashed massive fraud through grifters because criminals knew the federal government would not follow up on the money that was spending out. We told the world we were open for fraud and they could start harpooning us with their spears. No mas, no more. We are now making it very clear this administration will not tolerate this fraud. The massive increases that have grown to the kinds of numbers you could not imagine being able to show on a clipboard, with 90% of services billed and paid for, in Maine in particular, where there is no justifiable backup for it. 9 out of 10 services, you can't justify they should have happened. It's the opposite of what you'd normally expect.
90% in the state of Maine. This is so wonderful to finally see this stuff being addressed. You know, I mean, it exploded in 2020, but this obviously has been the norm for a very long time. It's just people got a little too greedy in 2020. All right, now following up on the announcement that we reported very recently about ineligible beneficiaries on Obamacare. Here is Mr. Brian Blaze. Brian Blaze is with the Paragon Health Institute. They are the group that did the research to determine exactly how bad the situation is. And he was testifying before Congress, actually in the same setting that the Georgetown professor was testifying. It's just that he is one of those people who is trying to stop this fraud from taking place.
It created a powerful financial incentive for states to prioritize expansion enrollees over traditional enrollees. On average, when a state spends $1 of its own money on a traditional Medicaid enrollee, the federal government contributes $1.33. But for $1 of state spending on an expansion enrollee, the federal government contributes $9.
Woo!
Thus, Washington pays states 7 times more for each state dollar on expansion adults than for people Medicaid was created to serve. Multiple studies show that Medicaid expansion has made it harder for traditional enrollees to obtain physician appointments. It's increased wait times and forced more patients to rely on emergency rooms for routine care. Medicaid should prioritize the most vulnerable. Instead, its financing formula discriminates against them. The same misguided incentives explain the surge in improper Medicaid enrollment. Yesterday, Paragon released a study by Liam Seago estimating that nearly half of the 20 million Medicaid expansion enrollees were likely ineligible in 2024. This imposed roughly $33 billion in improper federal costs, with a major cost shift from states to the federal government. A few states like California and New York have exceptionally high improper enrollment, but the problem exists in virtually every expansion state.
In these blue states, they basically did the math. They determined that they could grift the federal government for all of this additional money, and then they would be able to take those dollars and put them into the programs that they know they shouldn't be funding in the first place. All right, now, final piece from that hearing. That same Georgetown professor is being questioned by Senator John Kennedy, so you know he's going to be in rare form.
Do you think we ought to put people in jail for cheating?
Senator, I do not believe states are cheating.
You don't believe they're
I do
cheating?
not believe that.
Right. If they were cheating, what planet did you just parachute in from?
He does not like this.
Sir,
You don't
I've worked
believe
on
states
this.
are
I've
cheating?
worked on this program for a long time.
But I'm be
It's
sure to
not
understand.
perfect,
You don't
but
believe
states do not
You don't
cheat.
believe states are cheating.
I do not believe states are
Do
cheating.
you believe in the tooth fairy? Sir? Do you believe in the Easter Bunny? Do you believe that Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes? You're not answering.
I do not believe states are cheating in their administration of the Medicaid program.
Okay. I'm glad you have some water in front of you because your pants are on fire.
How can this guy with a straight face look into Kennedy's eyes in a hearing where he is under oath and say he doesn't think states are cheating? The evidence is overwhelming, okay? Every single time they look, we find that there is cheating going on, that there is fraud taking place. Now, here is an announcement I was not expecting. Harmeet Dillon and the Department of Justice announced a settlement that was secured with OpenAI for discriminating against U.S. workers. The Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division announced a secured combined $3.2 million settlement with OpenAI because their subsidiary StatSig in Bellevue, Washington, it's a software development company, was apparently violating the Immigration and Nationality Act by discriminating against U.S. workers and preferring workers with temporary employment visas. Companies were hiring and recruiting from a place using the permanent labor certification process. Now, Harmeet Dillon said it is illegal to discriminate against U.S. workers by preferring temporary visa holders for jobs. This substantial settlement ensures OpenAI redresses harm and changes its recruitment practices so that U.S. workers receive fair opportunity for highly sought-after tech positions. Now, OpenAI is definitely not the only company that's doing this. And we've pointed out a number of them in recent months. So I can only hope that the DOJ is investigating every single one of those instances. So the department's investigation found that OpenAI did not advertise positions it sought to fill through the PERM program on its external job website, even though its standard practice was to do so with other jobs. OpenAI also required applicants to mail paper applications for positions advertised as part of the PERM recruitment, even though the company permitted electronic applications for other positions. In addition, they also took steps to discourage U.S. workers from applying, such as advertising positions on the radio late at night. While there were far fewer than 10 PERM positions at issue, the resolution amount reflects the harm to U.S. workers when they are shut out of applying for lucrative technology jobs. And this, again, is exactly the same modus operandi that we see time and time again by these companies, tech companies in the United States of America, openly discriminating against Americans and seeking to hire people coming from other countries. All right, now, pointing out a major lapse of judgment and a huge source of corruption. Jennifer Lackard. She's a deputy police commissioner with the Mount Vernon Police Department, and she apparently drove a getaway car for her son in an apparent gangland shooting in the Bronx. She was arrested at her home Tuesday morning along with her son, Chase Lackard, 20 years old, after this young man allegedly shot at a group of rivals near the Bronx Criminal Court on June 29th at 11:57 p.m. He then rushed into her car before she drove off. Here is Jennifer, and here is her son, Chase. Now, thank God nobody was injured in this shooting, but the pair have been hit with attempted murder, attempted assault, criminal possession of a firearm, conspiracy, and reckless endangerment. The mom, most likely not going to be working for the police any longer, raked in $138,219 from her job at the police department last year. And they are no strangers to headlines. In 2024, Chase, who is a reputed member of the Slutty Gang, was shot by police after he allegedly wielded a gun during a dispute in Clayson Point. Here is security footage from that 2024 incident where Chase Lackard was shot by police in the Bronx. This is the gun that was recovered during that 2024 shooting incident. And the Post reported that his mom was a police official at that time. Only a year earlier, her son, who was then 17, was also shot in the chest on a BX5 bus in Soundview after fighting with 3 other youths, cops said at the time. Lackard allegedly flashed gang signs at the boy and then asked for their gang affiliation before allegedly trying to drag one of them off the bus. One of them shot him in the chest. F around, find out. Police arrested the mom and son Tuesday morning at their Soundview home after arriving with a search warrant. Good. Get them the hell out of there. Of course, they might say they didn't do nothing, but they definitely did something. All right. Now, Josh Hawley has just signed on to become the 20th senator supporting Mike Lee's pledge to work through August recess to pass the Save America Act. And you can see all 20 of them right here. The numbers continue to grow every single day. And all I can say is hopefully it will not all be for naught. Thank you so much to Jeff Forrest for the donation through Rumble Wallet, $10.01 through Rumble Wallet in Bitcoin. Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate that support. Also, Representative Andy Ogles, who is becoming, well, he's been a bit of a firebrand for some time in a good way, is calling out Rhino Senate leader John Thune because he has continuously failed to get the votes together, which is his job as leader of the Senate. He is calling for him to resign. Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles unleashed pure fire on Senate Majority Leader John Thune, demanding that he finally put the Save America Act on the floor or resign. He posted this on X. There are 0 good reasons for Thune's failure to put the Save America Act on the floor. This is how we get the votes, by debating it. Thune can either do the right thing or resign. And then in an interview with John Bickley on Morning Wire, Ogles went further, exposing Thune's excuses as pure cowardice. That is exactly what they are. Thune has also earlier today said that rather than attacking Republicans for not voting for the Save America Act, the American people should put pressure on the Democrats. He's saying that they should take this issue, go on the campaign trail, say the Democrats are the reason we can't get the votes, neglecting to mention entirely the Republicans who are refusing to vote in favor of the Save America Act, and his failure to even bring it to the floor so that it can be debated.
You guys in the House have been a little frustrated with how the Senate is handling this whole situation. Have you guys found some common ground here, or is there still a lot of tension there?
Well, I would say we're a lot frustrated, quite frankly. Senator Thune has the opportunity to put this on the House floor. They can do the talking filibuster. Look, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed because of the talking filibuster. 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed because of the talking filibuster. The Dodd-Frank bill was passed because of the talking filibuster. So there's a precedent here when you have monumental transformative pieces of legislation for the Senate to use this procedural maneuver to get it done. So, John Thune, do your job, get it done, or get out of the way.
President Trump has weighed in a lot on this. What is the latest we're hearing from him and what he wants the Senate to do?
He's frustrated just like I am, just like the American people are, that they see the Senate not doing their job. And look, this isn't a controversial issue. When it comes to Save America, again, over 80% of Americans say, let's get it done. So there's really no excuse for John Thune at all.
Yeah, and what are the arguments being made from Republicans for not moving forward? I know our listeners are frustrated. What are they saying?
To be honest with you, I have not heard a good answer from the Senate as to why they're not moving it, aside from the fact that John Thune has said he doesn't have the votes. Well, guess what? You're the leader. Bring it up, put it on the Senate floor, call a vote, and let everybody go on record. And once that's been done, do the talking filibuster. Like I said, you have historical precedent to get it done. He has a path forward. He's simply choosing not to do it. And again, the American people rightfully should be frustrated by that.
Yes, we are frustrated, and we will be frustrated if John Thune doesn't lead. I actually have no confidence that he's going to. I think that he's probably going to end up going on vacation. Here's the thing. I believe that there is a maneuver that they can do to have somebody open the Senate in John Thune's absence, bring this to the floor, and then vote on it and maybe get it passed with a simple majority. But people aren't talking about that because that would be very, very underhanded. It would certainly show that John Thune is a gutless, witless traitor to America, and his interests lie more with the globalists than they do with the American people. Now, Garland Favorito, who is, of course, the founder of Voter Georgia, is publicly calling on President Trump to declare a national emergency because we are in a national election security crisis and our intel agencies have been compromised. He's also the co-founder of the Trusted Election Results in Georgia, which is, I guess, also a name for Voter Georgia. They released this urgent message yesterday calling on President Trump to declare that national emergency. I think President Trump is waiting to see whether or not the Senate passes the Save America Act. But even if they pass the Save America Act, I think that he should call a national emergency because I don't think that we should be using the electronic machines at all. Garland released this statement after President Trump announced the intelligence agencies had become so corrupted that they hid the Chinese influence in the election in 2020 from both the president and a lot of other people. President Trump released one set of documents following that July 16th address to the nation that the National Security Agency, along with other groups in the intel community, withheld election manipulation evidence from Congress and the presidential daily briefing throughout the 2020 presidential election cycle. Favorito continued, one such document shows an NSA strategic intelligence analyst admitting that we have deliberately massaged our one pending PDB to avoid any direct links to the election. The threats to the election started in 2018, and yet the U.S. intelligence community kept this information hidden from President Trump at the time. The information would have been buried for eternity if President Trump had not won his re-election in 2024. In those documents, of course, we also had the fact that China hacked, bought, or stole access to 220 million voter records to mine the personal identifying information of Americans. That was Connect, if everybody remembers the coverage that I did on that several years ago. China imported 20,000 fake driver's licenses to be used for 2020 voter registrations. We've been talking about that for years. China conducted a massive election influence initiative to denigrate President Trump using social media, journalists, and pressure on political and financial supporters. Voter Georgia also added, in spite of dangerous foreign influence, much of the intelligence community chose to withhold virtually all intelligence, confirming it throughout 2020. Agencies involved in the cover-up included not only the NSA, but the FBI, the CIA, the Bureau of Intelligence and Research, and the State Department. This is the deep state. That cover-up was instituted over objections from career staffers at the NSA and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, one of whom wrote, "The presidential daily brief isn't going to tie to the election. The mind boggles." President Trump released those documents and more on the vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems, and we have known about these problems for years. The only thing that I can think is that President Trump is waiting to get as close to the election as possible so that there won't be a time for leftists in the courts to shop around to activist judges and somehow stop President Trump from being able to put that national emergency on the books. Now, Good news, the Senate Judiciary Committee this morning advanced Todd Blanche's nomination for Attorney General in a 12-10 vote. Those 2 votes from Cornyn and Tillis were crucial in making sure that we could get him out of committee. So the full vote for the confirmation of Todd Blanche most likely will happen this week. I believe I heard that it is now scheduled for Thursday. So this is good. Todd Blanche is going to be the Attorney General. He's going to make it through the full vote. And then once he is the Attorney General, we don't have to worry about swapping anybody out for the rest of President Trump's time in office. And Todd Blanche, hopefully, is going to take the DOJ as hard as he possibly can. Take those reins and really, really ramp up the investigations and prosecutions. Also, Scott Bessent earlier today swore Jay Clayton in as President Trump's new Director of National Intelligence in the Oval Office, with President Trump on hand and answering questions. Let's go ahead and listen. Why is that so quiet? That's why.
Which I am about to enter.
On which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Jay Clayton, he was just confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah, he's great.
Would you like to see him continue with Bill Pulte's work in exposing election?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sure he will. Bill did a great job, and Jay is has just been confirmed. And he's outstanding. He was the head of Sullivan and Cromwell for many years, and he's very outstanding. And I think he's going to do a fantastic job. And Bill was great. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, in light of advanced chat.
Without getting into the investigation, the protocols require consultation with the Department of Justice in Washington, and we followed the protocols.
And did anybody in Washington, D.C., suggest to you or anybody on your team that you should issue subpoenas in this case? Following the AP reporting of the president coming back on an airplane that was unsuitable for the protection and the defense of the president of the United States.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the details. What I can tell you is that we followed those procedures, and those procedures, for the reasons that I believe firmly, and you believe, protecting the freedom of the press, being the least intrusive possible, require consultation.
And I would say, Mr. Chairman, I know my time is up, but the reason this is relevant to, I think, a lot of us, or certainly to me, is that this question of being able to speak truth to power, in the context of intel.
Okay. And I don't know if Jay Clayton is going to be the guy, if he's going to do the same type of good work that Bill Pulte did or that Tulsi Gabbard did, but President Trump has said that he believes he will. And Bill Pulte is, of course, going to be staying on in some type of advisory capacity to make sure that Jay Clayton continues the work that he's been doing. Now, I saw somebody in the chat say, do not fall for the socialism. Whether they call themselves socialists or communists, effectively in practice, they are exactly the same. They call themselves socialists so that they don't have to use the word communist, because, of course, there is a far more negative connotation with the word communist. But all of their ideology is exactly the same. All of their policies are exactly the same. So, yeah, I'm not sure, why you think anybody is going to fall for it. As far as I'm aware, everybody in this audience is savvy enough to understand that these two things are interchangeable. We're not dealing with something that is highly divergent from what Karl Marx wrote. In fact, all of the teachings of Karl Marx are what inform the policy positions of these DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. So it's all the same thing. So I wouldn't worry too hard about that. But Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, sat down for an interview with Laura Trump over the weekend, and he continued to speak about the claims of Cuba having a network supporting and helping these communists here in the United States. He also pointed to historic examples of espionage connected to Cuba and suggested that this is a big, big problem. I don't know if we have video of this, but yes, there is several clips here. Let's take a listen. Okay, no commercial. Good.
They were the same people you saw on the streets burning things in 2020. They then flip it around and they become the pro-Hamas protesters, and they flip it around and within 48 hours of Maduro's arrest have pre-printed signs outside the courthouse demanding his release. And then they're out there doing the ICE stuff, attacking ICE agents. There's nothing organic about it. It is funded, it is organized, and Cuba is a part of that network, and in some cases, a critical part of that network. And it's a network they will weaponize against us. And they talk about it openly, about how they will use that network to pressure American policymakers, not just here in the United States like Code Pink, but all over the world.
Would you take a look at this? These are all the
Okay. And here he talks about espionage efforts that Cuba is engaged in.
To the average American, you see Cuba, small country, 90 miles off our shores, 9.5 million people population. What people forget that when it comes to things like espionage and influence operations, they actually are an influence and espionage superpower. If you look at the history of espionage in the United States, Cuba is the only country that consistently has implanted and embedded spies in our system without even paying them. We had an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador, who ended up being a Cuban spy and was recently convicted. We've had them penetrate the highest levels of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Ana Belén Montes was one of the single biggest intelligence failures on the part of the United States and one of the biggest penetrations we've ever had in our system. So, and then on the influence front, if you look all throughout Latin America, every communist left-wing insurgency that's destabilized governments across the region, every single one of them over the last 40, 50 years has found its support, its help, in many cases its birth, from a Cuban influence operation. So it was an important report just to highlight the role they play in our country, a very negative role.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely correct. A lot of people look at Cuba as this, tiny little island nation. They're cut off from the world. We've basically got them isolated economically. So how much power can they have? And the answer is a tremendous amount. Okay, this is the entire interview. We're not going to watch that. But continuing there, a Obama-appointed judge has just blocked the attempt that New York was looking to make to force ICE agents to unmask. Obviously, the supremacy clause of the Constitution dictates that states cannot overrule the laws of the federal government. But, of course, their anti-ICE cooperation I guess rules that they have, they don't have to cooperate with ICE, and New York obviously doesn't want that to happen. But they also wanted to dictate how these federal agents would dress, and they wanted them to identify themselves. But the Constitution got in the way. This federal judge handed the administration a major, although incomplete, victory on Monday, just temporarily blocking New York from enforcing the law they passed that requires ICE agents and other federal law enforcement officers to uncover their faces and display visible identification while performing their duties. The U.S. District Judge was an Obama appointee, Judge May A. D'Agostino. She ruled that the Justice Department will likely prevail on their argument that New York has directly regulated the federal government, which is in violation of the Supremacy Clause. New York cannot impose its own uniform requirements on federal agents simply because it disagrees with how the federal government is exercising its authority. D'Agostino added, defendants may be correct that federal immigration officers wearing masks and not displaying visible identification creates certain dangerous situations that the Face Covering and Identification Acts remedy. But that argument is addressed to the wisdom of the federal policy, and settled law establishes that federal, not state authorities make the policies that animate the enforcement of federal immigration laws. Governor Kathy Hochul and Attorney General Letitia James had tried to impose Albany's political agenda directly on federal officers carrying out lawful federal activity. And even an Obama-appointed judge concluded that they likely crossed the constitutional line. Now, the laws were signed by Hochul in May, and they prohibited officers from wearing masks that concealed their faces while interacting with the public, and required uniformed officers to display their agency and at least one individual identifier, like a name or a badge number. The requirements expressly covered federal agencies, which included ICE, Customs and Border Protection, the FBI, and the Drug Enforcement Administration. Willful violations could bring criminal penalties, including a misdemeanor for repeat offenses. But the court concluded that these were not ordinary, generally applicable public safety rules. They specifically attempted to control federal officers while those officers were performing official federal duties. New York can't do it. California can't do it. And if this does go any further, the Supreme Court is going to find that this is already settled in law, history, and tradition. We've had far too many instances of ICE agents being doxxed and having their families put in danger. So, I have no problem with them wearing masks, and I have no problem with them not wearing badges either. If you're not an illegal alien, you've got nothing to worry about from ICE. Now, in Massachusetts, there is essentially a contest to determine who can be the farthest to the left, the wokest clown in the room, between Seth Moulton, who's a representative, and current Senator Ed Markey. So Representative Moulton and Senator Markey of Massachusetts debated on Monday night. Moulton is challenging Markey, who's been a long-time senator in that position, decades as the senator from Massachusetts. They're both Democrats, and they both spend much of the debate trying to out-woke each other on various topics, which include ICE, immigration, and LGBT issues. The irony here is that even if Moulton was to replace Markey, he would most likely not be very different at all. Let's take a look at a brief clip.
Congressman Moulton, in your last debate, you said when you were asked about student athletes who are transgender, to anyone out there listening tonight, anyone in the LGBTQ community or anyone else, I stand with you because I've always stood with you. But after the last presidential election, you said, I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. Congressman Moulton, which is it?
To the trans community, feeling the weight and the pain of the Trump administration policies, I deeply recognize your trauma. And I'm sorry if my comments hurt you.
He answered honestly, and then when it comes time to address the same issue in a debate, he's got to backtrack it. Let's see how Senator Markey feels about men playing in women's sports.
We should have been loving those kids. There's only 12 trans athletes on the whole of the NCAA. We should have been embracing them. Instead, what Congressman Moulton did was he threw them under the bus. And then just 3 weeks ago, the Supreme Court of the United States agreed with him and said that those kids are not entitled to constitutional protections. Massachusetts has those protections. We have to fight to expand it for the whole country.
Oh, these people, I can't even believe them. Here he is bragging about protecting criminal illegal aliens and not American citizens, Senator Markey.
I voted against the creation of ICE. I could see its authoritarian personality as it was being created. I voted no. In 2020, I voted to abolish ICE. And this year, I was the first senator to call for the abolition of ICE.
Here is Moulton talking also about how often he has voted to abolish ICE.
Look, the Washington Senate establishment, including the Democrats who have been there for, in some cases, 50 years, have failed to solve this problem. And that's why Trump is able to weaponize the issue. And that's why I was the first in this race to call for abolishing ICE, but I went farther to say that they need to be prosecuted as well. We need accountability, which this current Senate has not delivered to the Trump administration.
Prosecution for what? For doing their jobs, for enforcing immigration law as Congress has written them? Let's talk about that a little bit more, Seth.
Well, I want to be very clear. I have a very clear 3-point immigration program. Number 1, prosecute ICE. Prosecute them for violating the law. They need to be held accountable. Number 2, create an immigration system that actually incentivizes people to come here legally, not illegally. My office has won 5 democracy awards, one of them for constituent services. We're regarded as one of the best immigration offices in the entire country, in part because we worked so hard to get our allies out of Afghanistan. But it was harder for them to go through the bureaucracy than it often is to come across the border. And 3, we need a pathway to citizenship for everybody who's here.
Holy shit. Anyways, finally here, would you support another government shutdown? I mean, why not? Who cares?
Would you support another government shutdown to achieve Democratic victories or block President Trump's agenda?
I would absolutely support another government shutdown. I supported the government shutdown last year to protect the Affordable Care Act. I would support another government shutdown this year to protect priorities of Massachusetts.
Absolutely. And if you think the Democrats in the Senate today are fighting hard enough against Trump and the Republicans, then vote for the status quo. If you want stronger fighters, that's why we need new leadership.
They are the exact same person with the exact same policies. The only difference is that Markey has been there for, half a century. All right. Now, Deborah Birx is not off the hook. Even though she threw Anthony Fauci under the bus recently, public health officials are beginning to come forward and talk about their experience with her. And specifically, the Republican mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, Glenn Jacobs. He's known for his work with World Wrestling Entertainment as Kane. I did not know that he was Kane. He recalled an exchange with Deborah Birx during the pandemic, and it gave no indication that lockdown measures were proven to be effective. It's also come out that the CDC was planning to put sick people in concentration camps, but it just never got off the ground. So during the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, where Anthony Fauci pled the fifth a whole bunch of times, Anthony Fauci refused to address the fact that he had ruined lives and businesses and families and children in the guise of science. But Deborah Birx, even though she was standing right next to him that whole time, when she came out afterwards to talk about this, she tried to act as if she had nothing to do with any of it. But she definitely was involved with these COVID restrictions and provisions. So replying to a post on social media from the Young Americans for Liberty account, Jacobs clarified statements he had previously made to the group, branding the response to the virus was a marketing campaign. He wrote, here's the story. Deborah Birx came to Knoxville to tell us what to do. She said to close restaurants and bars. When someone said the data didn't show the virus spread in restaurants and bars, she said, that's true, but we have to show people this is serious. Unsurprisingly, with exchanges like the one Jacobs described, millions of Americans won't be trusting health officials or experts or anyone claiming to speak on behalf of science in the near future. These are the people who insisted we wear masks, sometimes multiple masks. But a January 2023 study entitled Physical Interventions to Interrupt or Reduce the Spread of Respiratory Viruses found that wearing masks in the community probably makes little or no difference to the outcome of influenza-like illnesses. They demanded we social distance. Fauci, when questioned by the committee, suggested that standing 6 feet apart had no basis in fact or in evidence. It just sort of appeared. He said, I don't recall like a discussion of whether it should be 5 or 6 feet. We just decided on 6. Committee Staff Director Mitch Benzine asked, did you see any studies that supported 6 feet? Fauci replied, I'm not aware of any studies. In fact, that would be very difficult to do. The people that Deborah Birx and Anthony Fauci affected were quite literally every single American in existence. And I'm going to end with this one. A Democrat candidate who we've spoken about recently because he was arrested for making terroristic threats. He's apparently still in the race. He was on the beach in Hawaii. He is running for Congress as a Democrat in Hawaii. And he got into a fight because a beachgoer had asked him to turn his music down. This guy is running against an incumbent, U.S. Representative Jill Tokuda. He was arrested after this violent altercation on Kewakapu Beach in South Kihei. And South Kihei is a census-designated place in Maui County, Hawaii, located leeward south of Maui. The ambitious Democrat was filmed taunting a group on the beach, saying, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And then he was filmed getting knocked out cold in one punch by a guy who was fed up with his dirty mouth. Kirill Basin, 40, was charged with 2 counts of first-degree terroristic threatening, and his bail was set at $1 million. Take a look at this. Listen to the song that's playing, that he is playing. It's the Pixies. Take a listen.
Come up to him and say, put your bag away, bro. Put your bag away. I told him if he wants to go to the hospital, come here. It is over. Hey, fuck you.
Hey. Not my girl.
Fuck you.
Not my girls, right? You're not talking about my girls, right?
I don't care.
Don't do that, dude. Don't do
What
that.
are you gonna do?
Go ahead. Just go.
What are you gonna do?
Don, go ahead.
Am
Go
I?
ahead.
I didn't fucking put him in the ground. Let's go, bro.
Go ahead.
I'm good.
Let him
Do it, motherfucker.
I just said
Mike,
All right, good. It's over. It's over.
He's a child. Oh, shit.
Boom. So the song was Where Is My Mind? And the lyrics are with your feet in the air and your head on the ground. And that is exactly what happened to this guy. He was ass over elbow, boom, one shot, and he's out cold.
Wake up.
Candidate.
Wake up. Wake up. Yeah. What you fucking about, Holly boy? Yeah? Trey, stay right here. You done? You done?
You want some more?
Huh? You done? Come on, hey, put your bag away, bro. Put your bag away.
He got what he deserved. Absolutely. And here he is. Yes. And I don't know how to pronounce Hawaiian, guys. So I'm probably never going to say those words ever again. I'm not real worried about it. Anyways, let's go ahead and close out because I can smell dinner is ready. Thank you very much to Sean Joe for 2 cookies. Thank you to Trump 1 for a cookie, who says thank you for all you do, Zach. Thank you to Sean Joe for 4 more cookies. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says Brad CGZ is live now. And we're going to go ahead and roll you guys over to Brad. All right. Join me tomorrow right here. Well, actually, yeah, join me tomorrow at 5 for another episode of Red Pill News. I'll see you guys. Peace.